today. This has become our annual event, and we're very grateful that our local legislators take time out of their busy schedule to come see us prior to the legislative session. It's going to be beginning in January. They just finished a legislative session, a special session, a couple of weeks ago. So it is a busy schedule, and it's a busy time for them. They're preparing for the upcoming legislative session. And, of course, we want to hear what's going on and what their thoughts are about what will take place. I'll just turn it over to them. We have about 40 minutes or so, and hopefully I'm sure we'll have some time after to answer questions. Seated in the middle here is Senator Mark Schoesler, who is now the senior member of the Republicans in the state Senate. To his right is Representative Joe Schmick, and then closest to me is seated Susan Fagan, who's our representative representing here from Pullman. So I'll turn it over to Senator Schoesler.
Okay.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. I think this is something we're starting to look forward to doing every year, being on campus, talking about past sessions, coming sessions. I hope no one has to be here, part of their class. I hope you all come away feeling like you've learned a little bit more about the past and the coming session. You know, a year ago when I was here, we had formed a new coalition in the Senate that would be at least somewhat bipartisan, focus on jobs, education, and budgets. Some people said it would never work. Lieutenant Governor Owen said that this thing will crash in 2 or 3 weeks. Only one person in the state said this would work, and that was former Governor Dan Evans. He was interviewed by Austin Jenkins of NPR in Wheat Life and said, "This is no different than when Big Daddy Day was installed as Speaker in 1963. It can work, and it will work." It did. We had Democrat chairs, we had co-chairs, we had Republican chairs, we had even-numbered committees, narrowed committees, and for the first time in anybody's memory, we had a bipartisan press conference to announce the Senate budget. Sharon Nelson, who is now going to be the minority leader in the Senate, was there. Senator Parlett was there, Senator Hill, and Senator Hargrove. So you had a pretty big cross-section of the state putting it together that said, this thing really can work. It was bold that we could do it. And we came out with one idea we didn't initially agree on, and that was Senator Baumgartner's idea that we could cut tuition. That was a radical proposal by many that you could cut tuition. And our friends across the aisle didn't immediately agree with it. They really didn't think you could cut tuition. So we had a competing proposal of 5% in the House, 5% from the governor, -3. Politics is the art of compromise. In the end, we had 0 tuition increase. First time since 1986. Historic, in my opinion. I'd always dreamed of the day I could tell students there'd be no tuition hike. I finally got to do it before I retire. I can't think of a better accomplishment. But the fiscal policy that shaped up from there was what was really important. We had an unfunded liability in our GET program of prepaid tuition of about $600 million. $450 million of that unfunded liability disappeared overnight, according to the state actuary, by skipping tuition hikes for one biennium. Anything we do in the future on tuition has to have financially sound footings. Can't work otherwise. It has to be financially sound. So we ended up with a budget that froze tuition, a budget that had no general tax increases, and a budget that is sustainable for the first time in 4 years. We have a law that requires a 4-year sustainable budget so that we can't start programs at the end of a biennium, kick the can down the road. We actually have a 4-year balanced budget projection of well over $1 billion at the end of the 15-17 biennium. And that's done. And also, I think one thing that restores the confidence of the public is The public was told that beer and B&O taxes on professional services were temporary. If the public is to trust elected officials with tax reform, transportation packages, or other big policy items, they have to trust us. Temporary had to mean temporary. Making that temporary, I think, goes ways towards achieving that goal. Just like a prior year. Some of you may have thought that the Mariners package was a good idea. Some may have thought it was a lousy idea. But the taxes were temporary. And on the floor of the Senate, a bill that would have made those taxes permanent died because the public was told temporary to build the stadium. And temporary means temporary. That bill dying on the Senate floor to me was important, not because I disagreed with it, but because the public has to trust us if we're ever to move forward with agendas for the future. So that's a little bit about where we've been. This is where we're going. This will be the first time in 4, 5 years that we don't face a deficit going into a short session. We're not talking about the size of the cuts, spare me, find revenue. This is kind of a bold new world, one I remember from earlier in my career of we don't have a deficit. Now, we don't have a big surplus. In fact, we have a very modest surplus. And the biggest reason for fiscal prudence in this is the courts. The courts will drive this budget in a number of ways. We have a lawsuit on what's called gain sharing in pensions, systems 1 and 3. If we lose, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, short and long term. We have a system 1 annual COLA that was suspended because it was not sustainable. Courts rule that it's got to be paid, we got a problem. And third, as Representative Schmick reminded me, we had a mental health case that points out you were wrong and you owe millions in mental health payments that have to be made. And last but not least, there was a court case on the death tax last year called bracket that said you have to treat singles and couples the same. Now, it's a complicated tax policy. I'm not going to try and explain because I can't explain it myself. But what it said, you got to fix this. Well, we fixed it. We made some modest reforms. But many people believe that the court could rule the retroactive tax portion of that to be unconstitutional. So with those legal problems hanging out there, spending binge certainly doesn't work very well. So what I would like to see is boring. Leave tuition alone, don't create any unsustainable spending, and go home in 60 days. I think the drama of special sessions, food fights need to get behind us. Have a boring session. Try it. You might like it. So that's really what we face. I mean, policies cost money. Some people like to make moves on DUI. Well, that takes money. Some people would like to make another payment on basic ed. Takes money. So for now, let's take the peaks out, raise the valleys, and keep it simple. That, I think, is probably the best public policy we could look at right now and move forward. We look at a capital budget and we say, okay, because an excess number of bond issues passed, we have a higher obligation to fund school construction. We have to make that school construction happen. That's our Constitution, that's the requirement. We have to match that. You take that away, there really isn't much capital budget money left within our debt limit, so we have to stay there. So it's not going to be a sexy capital budget, but I think the Constitution was pretty clear. Building schools is something we all agree has to be done. And last but not least, we're still negotiating a transportation package. I can tell you it's a tough road to hoe. The asks are billions of dollars greater than anyone would fund. The need for reform and public confidence is real, and timing is everything. So a lot of tough discussions going on almost every day on that arena. And with that, I think I've given you a basic rundown, and I'd like to turn things over to the House members.
Oh, go ahead and clap. With your permission, I'll talk from here. My name is Joe Schmick. I live in Colfax. I farm there. I have farmed all my life until I got recruited to do this, and I was appointed in 2007. I am in charge of healthcare policy for the House Republicans, so I spend an abundance of my time in that realm. I deal an awful lot with social programs. Senator Schoesler talked about a lawsuit that we lost, and we did, and it had to do with Medicaid coverage for children, that they weren't getting mental illness coverage. And we lost that lawsuit. That's $9 million this year, $26 million next year. Another area that we're going to have to deal with is how we fund our regional support networks. And what the regional support networks do is that they provide care for the mentally ill. Now you say, why should I care about mentally ill? Well, people who need help, if we don't get them help, where do they go? They're out on the streets. They're in our jails. They're in our hospitals. Very high cost places to house people that sometimes just need a little help. Some of them need a lot of help. But frankly, a lot of times we've not done a real good job with mental illness. And that's why it's one of those things that we deal with constantly. How do we deliver the proper service so that we can help these people who need some help? A lot of times, I have some insight into this because my brother-in-law works with mentally ill people. And sometimes it's just a matter of checking back with them and asking them how they're doing. Are they on their medications? What challenges? It might be such a simple thing as they don't know how to fill out a job application. And that will trigger an episode. And then what happens? Either they're in the hospital, they're in the jail, and then we have to crisis mode to try to take care of these people. And so a little bit of effort and how, different ways we look at how we deliver mental illness care for those people that need some help. It's a big deal. It keeps our streets and our communities safe. So that is one of the big issues that we're going to have to deal with in this session. Probably another one that I learned that was going to go through my committee is medical marijuana and alignment of those rules. The Liquor Control Board has come up with rules, and with the legalization of recreational marijuana, those rules are quite a bit different than the medical side. And how are we going to make these work together? There's some challenges there. The medical marijuana, they could have 24 ounces in possession, and the recreational can have 1 ounce. Now, I don't know much about it, but I've seen the sheriffs and the law enforcement show me the difference. It's a big difference between the two. You guys probably know. You're probably aware. Some of us old fogies, we're clueless. But you laugh, and I think that's an illustration of part of the challenge. There has been a lot of abuse of the medical marijuana, to where a lot of people, I got my card. Well, there are some people who legitimately need this. The cancer patients who actually have swelling of their throats to the point where they can't drink, they can't eat. The marijuana relaxes them so they can at least drink and take some food. I mean, there are some legitimate uses. But when we add the illegitimate use of the medical marijuana side, here is our conflict. So that is one of the big issues that we're going to have to deal with. And you can bet that the medical marijuana people are out in force already. They're not happy. Because if the state taxes this to the level that they want, and the medical marijuana, they don't want to pay that tax, we're going to have to balance this. With all the taxes, I'm afraid what all we're going to do is strengthen the black market. So here, this is just to give you a little sampling of what we're going to have to deal with. The medical marijuana people, they want to be able to grow their own. They want to be able, to do this stuff. So how are we going to balance all this? It does cause a lot of problems in law enforcement because, quite frankly, a lot of high school kids are saying, it's legal. We should be able to use it too. And so it's causing some issues. How do we deal with this with people under the influence when they start operating equipment? How will you know that somebody's driving that bus out down the street isn't high? He used a illegal substance during his break or his lunch hour. Think about the ramifications here of what we're doing. So those are some of the things that we're going to have to deal with this year in the session, and it'll be interesting to kind of see where this all plays out. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little insight to some of the focus. That's what I will have to focus on this year in the legislature. And I'll stop there and allow Representative Fagan to add some comments, and we'll look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, I could just say what they said, and then I'm not going to repeat anything they said. And one of the big issues regarding the legalization of marijuana is that everybody has their sights on the revenue that's that's forthcoming because we're going to tax it. I remember one of our very first Appropriations Committee meetings last year, the chairman of the Early Learning Committee came in with a $348 million plan to spend the money on early learning programs. So it does look like a cash cow to a lot of people, but the expert that the state hired to manage, set up regulations and whatnot, it's not really easy to go out and find the experts in marijuana regulation writing, but he told us that it's going to be a while, if ever, before that money is generated, and that the need for additional law enforcement and those in the regulatory side of the legalization, that in itself is going to suck up a lot of that revenue. So will there be a lot of, I agree with Representative Schmick that, and maybe it was Senator Schoesler who said, with the way the state intends to tax it, it will drive a lot of this into the black market because people are not going to want to pay all those taxes, and it does look like a cash cow to the state, and it was sold that way as well. This is going to create a lot of revenue. You as college students, I know you're hearing a little bit about, and maybe you've heard something about the pay it forward. It's a way of trying to address the expense you come out of college with high student loans. I would just say, without getting too deep into the issue, that there are a lot of challenges in developing that program. And those of you who have been in Olympia, I know you've probably sat in on meetings, and we're a long ways from making anything like pay it forward happen. And we've heard that Oregon has implemented it, but Oregon has not. I mean, they're looking at it too. Because I think your student loans, if any of you have them, are a serious problem for our entire country. And especially when you're getting out of college and it's very tough to find gainful employment. Our economy is truly just rumbling along, not really picking up very fast. And it's a very unusual situation for as deep of a recession as we were in, because we usually come roaring out of a recession, typically historically. So I think all of us are concerned that your student loans are not and yours and others at all the institutions aren't just your individual problem, but it's a concern for all of us in our economy, because we know that you're going to need jobs. You're going to school so you can start careers, and that's incredibly important. So one more thing I'd like to touch on, and that is to highly compliment the people that you send to Olympia to represent you. I have, for day before yesterday, I was sworn in. I won a special election in 2009. I was sworn in December 2nd, 2009, thinking my first session would be the regular session of 2010. And before I even got my feet wet, the governor called a special session. I have served probably close to twice as many special sessions as I have regular sessions since being in the legislature for a couple of years. I don't really think that's an extremely efficient use of our time, and it does cost the taxpayers money. And I'm completely supportive of Senator Schoesler saying, let's have ourselves a very boring 60-day session and get through the session, because we know we've got a lot of things on our plate that we're going to have to worry about, and he mentioned them. There's still effort going on to develop a transportation package, and the House chairman of the Transportation Committee said, she's hoping that she was quoted in the newspaper. I read it, and newspapers never misquote. So she's hoping that there can be a deal struck and that we can get to Olympia and vote on it between now and Christmas. And I know that just about 99% of those of us who serve are hoping that we don't have to go to Olympia before Christmas. I mean, there are people who are saying we're probably not going to get the package till 2015. That nothing will happen in the 2014 session on transportation. And it's not that we don't need it to happen, but I do encourage you to focus on some of the critical need for reforms if we're going to get a big transportation package, because you as taxpayers deserve to have those reforms implemented, along with having to pay more in gas tax if that's the way the package works out. So thank you for inviting us. And I am going to do something a little bit out of order. I'd like to introduce our legislative assistants who are here. Krista Winters works for Senator, would you stand, Krista? These are the people that keep our offices going. And when you call our offices, these are the people that you talk to. Krista works with Senator Schoesler. Pam Kentner works with Representative Schmick. And my LA is Al Adet. So when you, yes, please. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. So we have about 25 minutes for Q&A. I think I'm going to start off, and I'm going to resist the temptation of asking about marijuana. And I'd like to ask you about the transportation bill, because as you mentioned, it is very expensive, about $12.5 billion, I think. But it is, on this side, it's very critical, and there's a lot of infrastructure needs. Boeing said that it's a key element in their decision-making going forward. So what has to happen? What's the sticking point right now in the negotiations to have a deal cut on that?
Well, I think there's a number of things that weigh into this. First of all, it is a factor in the Boeing decision. First meeting I had as a Republican leader is with Boeing. It was one of 4 key issues. When I met with Tim Keating, their vice president for government affairs, he said, we want a package, but we don't have date specific. So if somebody says the date is it really isn't. What's difficult is the different factions. First of all, part of the state would like to have transit be the focal point of a package. Another section really needs road improvements at choke points. Some need safety. And if you're struggling along, 10, 11 cents a gallon is real money. And weight fees or car tabs are regressive. So when you try to put all of these things together, it's a very complicated jigsaw. Then the timing. They call it baking time. When can you start a project? You might start a passing lane on 195 for safety in a year pretty easily. But realigning traffic through Joint Base Lewis-McChord, which is the worst choke point on I-5, might take 5 years. So when do the projects get built? When does all the money have to fit into place? And it has to be a very bipartisan effort. You can pass it with the mere 50 votes like the House did last year and have a really rotten package, because it was. But you have to have 60 votes for the bonds. You can't build anything without bonds. It's like building a house. You know, you can paint your house for cash, but you can't build it without a mortgage. And that requires 30 in the Senate. So it requires a bipartisan effort that's good for all of the state. And just taking a Seattle-centric view doesn't work. Just saying no doesn't work. So it's a lot more complex than some would like to believe.
So what I hear is there's no key.
No,
there's no one key sticking point.
There's lots of pieces. I mean, right now I would say transit versus roads is a big factor. And you can have a factor of complete streets programs that are a lot of things to urban cities. Or you can say, okay, we think that letting the counties and the cities have direct money, administer it through TIB in the cities, CRAB in the counties, and let those individual cities do what fits their needs, is one way of doing it. You can mandate it, or you can let them decide. Now, my personal opinion is what Pullman needs isn't exactly what Palouse needs. So if you have flexibility in that money, I don't want to impose a Palouse decision on Pullman, and I don't want to impose a Pullman decision on Palouse. So we've got a lot of tough factors.
Okay. All right.
I've got a longer-range public education policy question. I'll begin by stipulating that I've worked directly with Mark and indirectly with the two of you, and all three of you have been very, very supportive of this institution. Thank you very much for that. Let's stipulate that at the beginning of the question. But if you look at the last couple of biennia, the direct state funding, if the numbers I've seen are right, the direct taxpayer money coming from the legislature to the four-year universities has been reduced by about half. That number, that may be a little bit off, but that's a rough proportion that I've been led to believe. And much of that has been made up by the legislature either encouraging or allowing universities to raise tuition. And you indicated that we sort of got to the end of that gravy train, that the ability to raise tuition any further on the backs of most of the people in this room is probably not a practical one. So the net result is that the average student and their family in this state is paying a much larger percentage of the cost of their four-year degree than certainly would have been the case when I was growing up, and certainly if you go back to World War II, it's increased multifold. Same time, if you look at national unemployment data, you see a big inflection point between people with four-year degrees and people without four-year degrees in terms of who ends up on the unemployment rolls for longer periods of time. So I'm wondering about the juxtaposition of these two trends, long term, looking 10 years out. What's our higher education policy going to be like in this state? And are we on the verge of disenfranchising the children of the working class by making incremental decisions without maybe thinking about the real long term?
Well, I can tell you what we did in the Senate. I spent $500,000 trying to get rid of Senator Tom in the last election, and then I spent the last year working with him. And we went into the major editorial boards in the state with one promise, that the percentage of the budget that would go to K-12 and higher ed would increase, and it did. The only reason we were able to increase the percentage and increase the amount to get by without tuition was because we did it. We put the money there. It was $1 billion for McClary and enough money to prevent tuition increases. We got into this mess over a decade. And we're not going to correct it anytime soon. We have to, it's like a battleship. We're going to have to turn it at 1 degree at a time to get there. But we can't continue on the course we were on.
Do you see the percentage on the backs of students and families going down over, say, a decade? Is that
Yeah, just to put that in perspective, in 2000, the state assumed 76% of the cost of education at WSU. In 2013, it's 42%.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I think taking a step back and looking at it, two things have happened. The higher ed budget has been the checkbook for the state. Secondly, the conflict that I see is a battle between education, and especially higher education, because it's discretionary money. It's not mandated by the K through 12 in the Constitution. It's the battle between that and social services. And it is a conflict, and it's a battle we fight every year. I mean, all the time. It is a constant battle. And the one thing that I think that probably the best social service we can do is making sure people are employed. Opportunities and good jobs out there, that helps everyone. And that is so crucial. But I'm just trying to lay out, this is the conflict. I remember going to college. I was able to work all summer, and I made enough money where I was able to put myself through school. I came out of college no debt. I paid for it. And it wasn't a burden. I think it's virtually impossible. Impossible now. Well, how are we helping college students when they come out of school? Oh, by the way, here's your mortgage. Oh, by the way, go try to get a home loan. I mean, those student loans got to get paid. But this is the battle that we fight in Olympia. And that's it. Is social services versus the more traditional ways where we invest our money.
Well, the third issue, of course, being revenue sources. That's never going to go away. But again, and I know you're referring to an income tax, but quite frankly, the states that have an income tax, they're in the same boat we are. Well, I'm not necessarily referring to that, but I heard Dan Evans give a presentation when I was in the legislature that if his policy had been adopted at the time it was proposed many years ago now, all the state fiscal crises between the time he proposed it and the time of that hearing would not have happened. I'm not suggesting that an income tax is the be-all and end-all, but perhaps comprehensive tax reform to take a look at the entire revenue stream for the entire state. I know it's politically very, very difficult to do, but it seems to me that's a better way to approach it than say, well, we need an income.
And I think that probably is fair. And I think that is a very fair statement on your part.
I'd like to add to what Joe said also, that you can't believe the advocates. You're probably, probably 10 to 1 of the people who show up in Olympia to advocate for their positions, and there are, and every year I hear about new programs on the social side, and I am as compassionate as the next person. I think it's very important wherever you live. It's your job. It's our job to be considerate and helpful of those who are less fortunate than we are. That should start in our own communities. And I'm often shocked at the number of programs that every year I hear about new ones. Every year I hear about those that have been in existence that I've never heard about before. So whatever you do with your life, I think it's important, and you already know this, to be involved in your own community and do what you can at your local level, because there's always somebody at the next level up wanting to do the same thing, and the next level up, and they're the ones that show up in Olympia all the time. So take it upon ourselves to help those less fortunate right in our own communities, and we won't need some of these great big programs that we have and consistently get asked to fund.
To just follow up on Matt's question about, if you take the percentage of WSU support, and this is all public universities, it's gone from 76% supported by the state a decade and a half ago to 42%, so less than half now of WSU's cost is funded by the state. You know, the joke is it's now a semi-private or a semi-public university rather than a public university. Is there an effort to think about a goal? What should be the actual target for state support for higher education, the cost of higher education? When you fight these battles, you make these trade-offs, there's got to be some goal in mind at some point.
I think there's as many goals as there are legislators. Maybe that's part of the problem. But, one of the things I learned in recent years when I got more deeply involved in the budget, I thought I knew budgets fairly well. As I went through budgets line by line, late nights, early mornings with people, I discovered programs I didn't even know existed within agencies, within education, and they were all well-intended. But, boy, they just grow and grow and grow. And not that they're bad. Most of them are probably well-intended, but, you prune a fruit tree so you have better fruit. Sometimes maybe we need to prune government a little bit that we have better fruit.
Someone made a case, though, that 50-50 might be a fair. I don't know. Haven't looked at it. I haven't asked you students how you would feel if it were 50%. If the state were able to even that out more, but that is certainly something we'd love your thoughts on and how that would directly impact you.
So you talked about K through 12 education being constitutional. You have to provide for that, and then there's this battle between social programs and colleges. However, through K through 12 education, the whole time they teach you about going to college and preparing you for college. So if you take this trade-off that, well, we're going to cut our college, you cut how much money we give to colleges. I mean, do you have to reform K through 12 so you don't teach everybody, let's go to college?
But we're working very hard to recognize the fact that not everybody is meant to go to college. I mean, we need plumbers and we need carpenters and we need electricians, and I do think we're starting some balance out there with skill centers. I think we have a fabulous community college system, but people do have to get something beyond high school. They do need a certificate of some kind, or an associate's degree, just to be able to make a living wage. I think that we're sending some of these right messages about not everybody is meant to go to college. But I'm curious, do you think everybody's meant to go to college?
That's the way it's portrayed in K through 12 education.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I mean,
See,
if you go through the education system in Washington like I have my whole life, then certainly that's the belief that's portrayed to you.
but we can, but we have.
I mean, obviously you're right. Not everybody's
Yeah.
meant to go to college. I don't disagree with you there. But I mean, do you need to reform K through 12 education so that there's, everybody talks about four-year universities. Do you need to have more, funding for skill centers and more funding for community colleges?
Sometimes I think we need better counseling. Not more counselors, but better. That people get a real life. What do people in good trades make versus somebody that has a bachelor's degree in major X? And if you go to college, what are the real chances of a job? The biggest eye-opener I ever had about that was I was on the combined K-12 higher ed committee my first term in the Senate. We had every college, public and private in the state, that prepares people for education, teaching degrees. And at that point, only 50% of the education graduates got a teaching job full-time in the state of Washington upon graduation. Now, somebody needs to be really honest with these young people at some point. If you want to be a teacher, God bless you, it's a great need. My daughter, son-in-law are educators. But be honest with our young people that if you want to do it, you got to work hard at it because there isn't a guaranteed job waiting for you because you show up. And we need to have better counseling, not more.
Can I ask a quick question about education funding, or as long as we're on that. So, I mean, you noted that the legislature put $1 billion towards the McCleary mandate, but there's still, what, about $3.5 billion before 2018 that you have to come up with. Is there a way forward? What's the plan on that?
Well, I can tell you that the legislation that passed with no possible way of funding it. 2 House bills were the basis for the McCleary decision. At that point in time, we were running in the red, and they passed something that was not sustainable then, nor may not be now. We can possibly grow into it. We can possibly amend it. But just money is not the answer. I mean, we have to look at reforms to K-12 that will deliver results along with the money. If just money was the answer, you would want your kids in the Washington, D.C. public school system, because they spend more money than anybody else, but I don't think anyone here would wish that on their children. So we're going to need a combination, and I think we're going to dig our way out of it.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah.
So one of the big drivers, well, a driver of the increased cost of education, it's a little bit smaller, but textbooks have risen dramatically. I read something yesterday that since 1980, the cost of textbooks has risen something like 812%, which is far beyond the rate of inflation, in case anybody wondered. We had Representative Shelley on campus a couple weeks ago, and he's working with Representative Zeiger, sort of the 2 young bucks, that's what they describe themselves as, I suppose, on perhaps a sales tax holiday for textbooks. Now, it's not going to make a big difference. It's not going to affect the thousands of dollars in student debt, but a lot of students are spending hundreds of dollars, $500, $800 sometimes, on textbooks, and an 8% holiday from those things could make a big difference. What is your opinion, the 3 of you? Is that something that's feasible? Is that something, I know it's sort of a new proposal, so you haven't necessarily seen a fiscal note or anything like that, but what is your reaction to that upon hearing it?
Well, it'll
take
be
a look
interesting to take a look at. But you'd think in this advanced technological age that textbooks, really? I mean, where's my tablet? I mean, shouldn't, I guess maybe there's another step that we should be taking. And I have a family member that's going to Gonzaga Prep, and he has no textbooks. They're all on his tablet. So if they can do it at Gonzaga Prep, possibly can do it in other places as well.
We saw the same thing at Delta High School in Richland yesterday. There's almost no textbooks in Delta. That doesn't mean that the people that write the textbooks aren't compensated, but hardbound printing in small quantities is very expensive, and they've almost completely eliminated it.
Can I ask a quick question? How many of you that take classes are taking a class from a professor that you're required to buy that professor's book that he's teaching? Wow.
Any of those professors in the room right now?
Anyone raise your hands?
Well, because I remember that when I went to school, when I had to buy that professor's book, that hardbound book, that was expensive. I can only imagine what it's now. How much is a book? No, really. A current minimum 50?
Depending on the book.
More?
Oh, could be much more.
Wow.
Yeah, lab run in the hundreds. Lab manuals are upwards of 100.
Really? Wow.
Speaking as a
Thank
faculty
you.
member, 80% of what I assign is online now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a gentleman
Thank
in the
you.
very back hasn't had a question yet.
Well, but even with online books, I bought one for over $100, and that was, online.
It doesn't save money necessarily to go online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, back here.
Representative Fagan mentioned or talked about the larger number of lobbyists or whatever that come and talk on the
Citizen lobbyists even. Just citizen lobbyists, yeah.
on the social issues. And a thing that's always struck me is we're sitting here in the 9th legislative district. Our 9th legislative representative and senators are here. But I'll bet you in this room, those of us that are actual citizens of the 9th are a minority. having their parents' friends, and WSU has students from every one of the 49 legislative districts. Why aren't those parents and parents' friends and their employers and everybody else also lobbying for education and Washington State University? And I don't expect you guys to be able to answer it.
Yeah, back here.
I was struck or heard a new idea, and I'm wondering if I'm the last person to hear about it. But in a meeting on Monday evening, it was mentioned that WSU is in the top 10 of veteran-friendly campuses, and that in fact, the soldiers coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq, as we close down those operations, number in the hundreds of thousands, and most of them have been at least in 2 different service periods in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Many of them have very serious social, medical needs, and are being given, and rightly so, the opportunity to do something similar to the GI Bill. So they will come to school to get some training. And with those people who served us so bravely, they bring all the social and medical problems. And I'm wondering if anybody has been thinking about what that means for Pullman, for Washington State, and for the state of Washington. And I'm wondering if, I'm just the last person to hear about this, but it was news to me.
Well, I think you'd be very pleased to know that these student leaders have fought for and have secured an actual location for veterans to feel like this is where they can come and they can get some of those special needs addressed. But if you go up to Eastern Washington University, they also have a veterans center. And I think people are understanding, Karen, some of those needs that are very specific. And I'm not saying the work is done, but there is a location on campus. It's not a permanent, it's temporary, but they're working on a permanent location. And you need to give these students great credit, because I don't believe any of them are veterans that have been working on it, correct? So their foresight into those needs are very evident here.
Let me ask you about one other hot button topic, and that is, it looks like we're going to have competing initiatives on guns coming up. Is the legislature going to do anything on guns this session, do you think?
I would be very surprised that the legislature would deal with either one. The history of my recent history of initiatives to the legislature is to send it to the voter, let it go to the voters. I don't know that this will be any different. I think the last time the legislature did a counter proposal was in 1989 with the Superfund counter initiative. So we go back before I started service, since there was one, and I fully expect both just go to the voters.
Just to follow up, a lot of what's coming out as far as gun control has stemmed from what a lot of people have categorized as a mental health crisis in America. The shootings in Connecticut and in Colorado specifically have been linked to mental health issues. And I think a lot of what happens with gun control can be addressed before these kinds of people even come in contact with guns. So my question is, how serious is Washington State's commitment to establishing a more robust mental health institutions and really helping these people before they kind of hit these areas of mass shootings and these real kind of crisis situations?
As I stated before, it's a challenge, and we're going to have to continue to work at it to figure out a better delivery system to take care of these folks. I'm just being blunt, and a lot of times it takes dollars to do that.
Do you see federal help coming in at all for those kinds of things?
Oh yeah, there is some that comes, but still we've got to deliver it effectively.
I think in the Senate, Jim Hargrove, who is the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, has been a champion of mental health programs and the Second Amendment. And I think he's one of the key people we'll look to, that he's been part of shaping and funding mental health, and he also believes in the Second Amendment. And having a leader in that position, I think, is very useful in this debate.
If you're going to take one question, there's a gentleman
Yeah,
in the
last
back there.
Yeah, one last time.
It seems like members of Congress in Washington D.C. are more polarized today. It's getting more difficult for them to make this word compromise, but they act more unseated now. So I'm wondering if the same thing is going on in the state of Washington.
Well, I can't speak for the House. I'll let the House members do that. But the Senate, I believe, is functioning at a completely different level. We have chairmen from both parties. We have co-chairman, President pro tem. We had 30 people vote for the initial budget, with 2 excused. So we had 60% approval on a budget. Sharon Nelson is, fairly liberal. We had people fairly conservative, both sides, vote on a budget. The final budget vote in the Senate was 44-4. So I think the Senate is getting closer. And one of the reasons we're considering a transportation package is because we don't expect any help from the other Washington. It used to be a freeway was built 90% federal money, 10% state. Those days are long gone. So one of the reasons we're willing to consider it is the gridlock in D.C. is forcing us to take care of our own. That's the Senate perspective.
I would say very quickly from the House perspective, we still have to have a balanced budget. We're going to produce a balanced budget, and that forces us to work together. Yes, there are issues we're not going to agree on, but we have to. I mean, we've got to put out stuff that we do agree on, and we work towards that.
And our numbers are very lopsided in the House, where they're very close for the senator in his body. Joe and I are Republicans, and our numbers are much smaller. But again, Joe and I voted for the budget this year. We may not have agreed with everything in it, but we realize that it is important to work together, and that you expect us to. You expect us to resolve whatever the differences are and be able to work together. And I think we considering how lopsided it is, and I want you to think that I'm painting a rosy picture, because sometimes it's very, very tough. But I think in the end, we work hard to work together on your behalf.
I guess I'd wrap it up with one thing on that closing question back there, because it was a good question. The way the senators worked the past 3 years with difficult budgets and narrower majorities is that when you go to pass that budget, voting for the budget's one thing, but the bills to implement it can be tough. And the people that voted for each of the key pieces to implement the budget, the Senate, Ed Murray wouldn't vote for some aspects, Joe Zarelli wouldn't. R&D, liberal conservative. I couldn't vote for the tuition portion. Somebody else could. Suspending I-732. You had a different coalition of people voting for every key aspect of that budget to go along with the overall result. So you had to have a coalition. If you were looking at, we had to do a quality assurance fee for the hospitals this year, renew it. I can guarantee you it wasn't the same. There weren't 44 votes for it. But the end product there was. That's how we put a budget together. Not easy, but it worked.
Okay, unfortunately our time is up. Before I ask you to join me in thanking our guests, this is our last event for the semester. We'll resume our programming in the spring. If you're interested in getting information and emails about our events, there's sign-up sheets out front. Also, if you're here for a class, there's some sign-up sheets out front. Otherwise, I want to thank you for coming out to our event today, and join me now in thanking our guests and taking time out of